Good evening, everyone. I'll call this meeting to order. Make sure all your devices are turned off, please. At this time, if you're able, please rise for our national anthem.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of its command, car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Now for our land acknowledgement. Niagara region is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Haudenosaunee, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe peoples, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The City of Port Colborne stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. Council, there are no proclamations this evening. If I could have Councillors Wells and Bodner move the agenda. Are there any questions to that? All in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried. Are there any disclosures of interest this evening? Thank you. We have two sets of minutes for approval. First set of minutes is public meeting of August 9th, 2022. And the second set is regular meeting of Council, August 23rd, 2022. If I could have Councillors Desmarais and Beauregard move those. Are there any questions? All in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried. Under items pulled for separate discussion, we have items 8.2, 8.3, 8.4, 8.5, 8.6, 8.7, 8.8, 8.12, and 9.3. Any further items? Councillors Bruno and Danch, if you could move the items not being raised this evening. Any no questions? All in favor? That's carried. We have one presentation this evening, item 10.1, My Main Street Program Update. And this is a City of Port Colborne presentation. Welcome. So Olga Lofen is here giving this on our staff's behalf. So welcome, Olga, and go ahead.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor Steele, city councillors, city staff, residents listening in from home and here in the room with us. Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to present the My Main Street program update to date. My name is Olga Lofen, as Mayor Steele had introduced me, and I am the Port Colborne Main Street Ambassador, representing the small businesses in our community. So just a little bit of background on the program, the My Main Street program. In 2021, the Canadian Canadian Urban Institute and EDCO partnered together, and with the support of FedDev, they injected $25.25 million into a program that would become a two-tiered program. The first tier would be the Main Street. Sorry, Simon, can you flip that? The first tier of the program would be the Community Activator Program, which has been acting as a placemaker program in communities in all of Southern Ontario. A perfect example of one is the West Street Rainbow Crosswalk, that we painted in 2021, as well as the Downtown BIA Lift Festival, which will be starting coming this September 24th during Heritage Festival with a few art installations. The second part of the program is the Business Accelerator, which is the program that I've been representing. It's essentially a program that is representing 65 communities in Southern Ontario. Toronto is not included in this. They have their own program because of the size of their demographic of the size of their area. Excuse me. With the help of dedicated ambassador, which has been myself, we're providing support to the businesses in our community in Port Colborne and providing them the opportunity. So 5 businesses that are existent and 5 new businesses that potentially are joining the community will have the opportunity to access a non-repayable funding of $10,000. In December of 2021, the City of Port Colborne received funding for the My Main Street program in order to be able to hire an ambassador, which has been myself. And since February, I have been providing support for the businesses in our communities. Specifically, the program focuses on the Downtown BIA as well as the Main Street BIA catchment areas. However, program support is also being provided to businesses outside of those areas. It's just that if a business is outside of those 2 areas, they can't actually apply for the funding portion of the program. There are some program specifics criteria that businesses do need to qualify for. I'm happy to share those if anyone's interested in specifics. However, primarily things like franchises, if a business isn't open at least 35 hours a week, those are sort of the specifics. In terms of what the funding can be used for, things like equipment, inventory, as long as it's new inventory, leasehold improvements, facade improvements, marketing, technology, and also if a business is new, they can access the first and last month's rent towards their lease. My Main Street can also recoup that for them if they do qualify for the actual program. So the application timeline is a bit tedious, I would say. There is quite a few steps. So just a quick review for you as to what it would take for a business to apply for the program. So far, applicants have taken anywhere from 2 weeks to about 2 months to fill out the application. We think this is based on the busyness of the brick and mortar store that they have, if they don't have any employees that can help. There's various reasons behind this. The external review, once they have submitted their application, can take anywhere. It used to be 10 days, but we're finding now that there's an influx of applications coming in. It can take up to 3 weeks. Successful applicants, once they find out, will receive 50% of the funding as soon as or 10 days post filling out their bank information and signing their contract. The first 50% of funds must be spent within 30 days, at which point then I can help fill out an interim report, which has to be accompanied by receipts. The interim report has to match the application and what it was they asked to spend their funds on. It can't be just on sort of anything they choose to spend it on. And then once that happens, within 10 days, they will send you the next 50% of the funds. They will have 90 days to spend those funds. Funding has to be in a recipient's bank account by December 31st, which correlates with the end of the fiscal year, I'm assuming. And then post that date, they have 90 days to sort of submit their final report with receipts to kind of close out the program and give feedback as to how they found this program to be for them. So interest in the funding, it has been steady. There's roughly about 25 businesses in our community that are that are interested in the program, but presently we have all 10 positions filled, and the applications are being written. That does not, however, mean that those businesses will qualify through. They still have to go and be scored through an external process, so positions might still open before the end of the year. In terms of program marketing, that has been sort of multifold. Initially, we had released a media release from City Hall, which was fantastic. It yielded lots of interest. The first week that I started, there was lots of emails in my inbox already asking about the program, so that worked out really well. City Hall staff has been fantastic at also spreading the news about the program. I've presented to the Port Colborne and Wainfleet Chamber of Commerce. I've presented to the Downtown BIA. I've met with the Main Street BIA. The weekly Downtown BIA newsletter also has information about how to access myself. And then that's also where we list any seminars that are happening that are free of charge for anyone within the business community to access. The other sort of major place where I myself have been sharing information is through a social media platform. I have an Instagram account, a Twitter account, as well as a LinkedIn account, and any sort of information pertaining to this program is shared there. But I've also taken the opportunity to, with that presence, is to share any sort of news that's happening within our community, whether it be related to businesses or community events, and that's also helping spread the word about what's happening. So now for the good news portion of the presentation and this program, essentially, the main goal of it. To date, we have had 4 businesses successfully apply for the program and receive funding. Up to $40,000 has been awarded. On Main Street, Lucky Thai Restaurant has been a recipient. They were the first ones. And then in our downtown BIA catchment area, we had the Art Guild, Summer Haze Studios, which is a new art studio that's opened up in Guild Hall. They are starting their fall classes actively actually this week, but they did start out in April as sort of a soft launch, and there was so much interest that they created wait lists for all their art classes for the fall. The third recipient was A Amigos on Clarence Street. They've been open since 2010. And lastly, Genius Fitness and MMA, which is also on Clarence Street, and the owner is presently expanding to the space next door, which was formerly Lock Pizza, now moved on to West Street. So the hope is that if all 10 businesses successfully apply for the program, that My Main Street program will have injected a total of $100,000 into the Port Colborne small business sector. I'm diligently working at hopefully achieving all 10 of those for our community. In terms of support for small businesses, it's almost been 2-tiered. There's support that comes from the My Main Street program, which has been 2 community market profiles, one for our downtown BIA and one for our Main Street BIA, essentially capturing information as to who lives here, what they're spending their money on, who our visitors are, and those are accessible for any individual, community organization, business owner. There's also been the access to on-demand videos and free webinars. There's been some mastermind sessions that businesses can sign up for free as well that I've been spreading the word about. Once a business decides that they do want to pursue the application and they fit the criteria, the first step actually is to apply for a custom market report, and that's specific to their catchment area, their sort of the residents in their area, but also specific to their industry. So it'll be specific to what it is that you are retailing. And then, of course, the support is ongoing in terms of writing the application, helping in terms of submissions, any interim reports, and if a business qualifies through to the end, also help with the market report, or sorry, not market reports, the marketing package, getting together a news release and any sort of social media marketing that they're going to be putting out there. And then there's sort of the second tier of support that's being offered. So on top of what it is as an ambassador, I was sort of tasked with doing, there is a great deal of City Hall support where I've been trying to connect City Hall to our small businesses and explain to them and show them that the doors are open, we're here for them, that there's more here than just coming in and paying for your water bill or coming and getting a license or a building permit, that the staff on all 3 floors are happy to help. So through discussions with business owners, we've come to reveal that there are some resources that business owners are not aware of. It's not always all of these together, but it's been a sprinkling of some. So when I am talking to business owners, I'm trying to sort of convey this availability of information. There's a business directory on our website. I've been sharing that, where businesses can sign up for free. A lot of businesses haven't been aware that we have a CIP program that they can apply to, so there's been a lot of communication introducing business owners to the CIP program. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, but the fact that I can walk in and present that to them has been such a wonderful resource to share, and that the city is happy to help. We have a document titled How to Start a Small Business in Port Colborne, which initially came out of when the Niagara Small Business Enterprise Center had a satellite office at Roselawn. They created this document with us, and I have been sharing it with businesses, connecting owners to city staff. Sometimes they're not sure who to reach out to, so I just say, you can reach out to myself. I'll find out who the appropriate person is, and I'll happily pass you along to the right staff. Sharing information about additional grants. So presently we have Digital Main Street that businesses can apply for. There is the Canada Digital Adoption Program if a business is interested in adding e-commerce to their website. There's a Shop Here program where you can have access to a one-on-one mentor, and they will help you build an e-commerce website. So there's quite a few resources businesses aren't necessarily aware of. I'm trying to encourage a lot of business-to-business collaboration. I'm finding on my walks around that business owners have fantastic ideas, and then as I'm speaking with someone else, connections are coming alive, so I'm introducing people to each other and hoping that that can also kind of create more of a community over competition concept, and people can work together. Planning of a grand opening, I've noticed that not everyone knows that they can contact City Hall, and that Mayor Steele will attend, and that there can be a ribbon cutting. So some businesses have just had them on their own. They haven't really tried generating any media attention. So we're putting together a little package to kind of let them know about the specifics and how they can leverage that information. The farmers market, a lot of businesses don't know that as business owners in this town, they have access to 2 complimentary booths for the duration of, I guess, the summer and winter, depending on what it is they'd like to offer. A lot of times businesses have reached out because they're new here and they don't quite know yet that we have a BIA in the Main Street area and in the downtown area, so I've happily introduced them to the chairs and directors of those. The Port Colborne and Wainfleet Chamber of Commerce and the perks of being a member there. I've been happily sharing that as well. Venture Niagara has been a great resource to share with businesses that are needing a bit of financial aid and would prefer not to work with a bank. Plus, this is a better organization in terms of working with a smaller business versus going the traditional route of a bank. Of course, Niagara Falls Small Business Enterprise Center, they specifically work with Port Colborne as one of their areas, and they've been fantastic in helping businesses prep their business plan or just provide any sort of guidance that they might need as a new-time business owner, but also someone that's already existed as a business owner maybe needs some help with something if they're shifting things around a little bit. They've been an amazing resource. And then occasionally PC Works Employment, in case anyone's looking for staffing. I believe that concludes my presentation. I just would like to thank everybody for listening in on this presentation this evening. It's been wonderful and rewarding to work with our community and provide the resources that we have available at City Hall and also obviously through the Main Street program. And I'm constantly reminding business owners that they can either email, they can call, or just come into City Hall and reach out to us, and we're here to help them.
Great, thank you all.
Does anyone have any questions?
Council, any questions? Councilor Bruno.
Not really a question, but a comment. I had the pleasure of listening to this presentation at the ACDEV meeting here in Port Colborne, as did some other councillors and the mayor. I have to tell you that I think from a Port Colborne point of view, when I see 10 businesses that can get $10,000, that might be the difference between them going forward in these times or crashing. The other orders of government paying for your time and this grant is really one of the better programs I've seen to spend $100,000, get all this knowledge and tutelage, let them do something they can't do to change their business. And although I have to say, to start a program from ground zero in a small community and at the same time convince people what ECDEV or the city of Port Colborne can do for them. In other words, an education on what is already available is to me a tremendous value. And so I want to thank you for the first-class job, but I don't know if there's anything we can do but to encourage the upper levels of government to continue this, because, you know, helping 10 businesses at a time when they could really use it. I really believe there's businesses that will be here 5 years from now that might not have been. And that's a terrific spend. So thank you for your work.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. It's been quite the honor.
Great. Further questions? Okay, seeing none. Thanks again, Olga.
Thank you so much, everyone.
If I could have councillors Bagu and Bruno move to receive. All in favor? That's carried. There are no delegations this evening, Council. We'll get on to the Mayor's report. Like the rest of the world, we were saddened by the news of the death of Queen Elizabeth II last Thursday. A book of condolences is set on a table near the entrance of City Hall, and we invite anyone who wishes to sign it, perhaps share a memory, to come in this week to do so. We'll have it available during these days of mourning in Britain and send it to the royal family next week. And at this time, if we could just bow our heads for a moment of silence with respect to the Queen. Thank you. God save the King. As chair of the Police Services Board, one of my duties and privileges is to attend the Canadian Association of Police Governments. I attended 2 days last week remotely via technology, not in person, and the meeting was held in Saskatoon. It was a meeting of Police Service Board leaders from across the country, and it's important to learn how other police services deal with issues, how they deal with civilian oversight, budgeting, policy development, labor relations, and we share best practices, the best way to deal with issues including crisis team management, mental health and suicide prevention, community mobilization units, First Nations governance, diversity, and so many issues facing police services. It was 2 days of intense discussion and learning. We all face similar issues. It's always good to learn from others that, what works and what doesn't. We will strive to serve in the best capacity as we can. Yesterday, I attended the opening ceremonies and awards of the International Association of Women in Police Conference in Niagara Falls. More than 800 delegates from the 4 corners of the world are in the Falls for 5 days of intensive police training. I met the Sultan of the United Arab Emirates, police chiefs and officers from Australia, New Zealand, Ukraine, Jamaica, and the list goes on. One of the most impressive delegations was from Newfoundland, and it was honored to be among them. And Newfoundland still wears the bobby hats. So we had about a dozen female officers representing Newfoundland, and it was pretty cool seeing the British ties to Newfoundland still today. And the Sultan from Dubai was amazing. Didn't speak English and gave his whole speech in Arabic. On the big screens was his speech in English, obviously, but it was pretty cool. And he received the only male award that they have of the numerous awards for women in policing, and it was with regards to his involvement in women's policing in his country and creating a better atmosphere for women in general in the United Arab Emirates. So it was fascinating. And the march that we did from the top of Murray Street down to Table Rock with well over 1,000 marchers from across the world, and all the flags, the pipe band, and dignitaries and the tourists along the way that some knew what was going on, some didn't, taking lots of photographs, clapping. So it was actually it was quite the scene. It was quite the scene, and right there in the front were all the forces from across Canada, but especially the ladies from our mounted police in their red tunics. Was spot on. Port Colborne will welcome 50 of the country's best bass fishermen this weekend. The Canadian Bass Anglers Federation Regional Semi-Final Tournament is September 14th to 18th. The anglers will launch from Sugarloaf Harbor Marina for practice days in Lake Erie starting tomorrow, and they'll do that until Friday. And the official fishing on Saturday and Sunday from 7 a.m. until 3 p.m. And I'll be at the Belmont Hotel on Friday to welcome them on behalf of all of you and City Council at the dinner meeting when they go over all the rules for the event. So when you see all the pickups towing powerful bass boats, you'll know the best of the best bass fishermen are right here in the city of Port Colborne. And what little girl or boy doesn't want to sit behind the wheel of a giant bulldozer or a fire truck? A reminder to all that the Touch a Truck event is back. And this is back by popular demand, and it's on Tuesday, September the 27th. Bring the family, the children, the grandchildren, the young, and the young at heart to the Operations Center on Clally Street from 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock. That ends my report. Any questions? Great, thank you, Council. Now we're on to Regional Councilor's report. Councilor Butters.
Try not to knock that down this time, which I did the last time. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Good to see everyone, and I'm really happy to be here. Today's a pretty darn good day. 8.3 on your agenda. I'm so happy to see the Haney Street affordable housing piece, and I look forward to that deliberation. With us tonight, I can welcome Donna Woshishin, who's the Director and CEO of Niagara Regional Housing, fabulous leader. She has brought us through the last 4 years brilliantly, and really glad to welcome her to Port Colborne tonight. The other really cool thing about today was I got this email from the chair, from Chair Bradley, and I'm going to read it to you because I was so excited I thought I can't do any better than this. In a letter addressed to Regional Chair Jim Bradley, Ontario Ombudsman J. Paul Dubé confirmed his office will be closing their file on the tainted 2016 Chief Administrative Officer CAO hiring process, expressing thanks for the cooperation he experienced from the region. In the letter dated September 7th, 2022, the Ombudsman confirmed that Regional Council has successfully implemented all 16 recommendations found in his 2019 Inside Job Report. Given Council's willingness to implement these changes, the Ombudsman's letter indicates that no further follow-up reports are required, and my office will be closing our file in this matter. The 71-page Inside Job Report responded to over 110 formal complaints registered with the Ontario Ombudsman's Office by members of the public. These complaints called on the Ombudsman to investigate how the 2016 CAO hiring process was carried out and many other related issues. In addition to providing an extensive overview of the situation and his findings, the Ombudsman gave Regional Council several recommendations to help avoid similar issues in the future. Some of these recommendations include, number one, implement a formal code of ethics and policies to protect confidential information, including employment contracts, and that anyone involved in a hiring process is required to sign a confidentiality agreement. Two, provide staff and councillors with additional training on the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, as well as the proper use and retention of email and corporate records. Three, create policies that ensure no candidate is given an unfair advantage in a hiring process, including sharing interview questions and answers with one specific individual. Four, limit the role and influence of staff in the regional chair's office as to avoid them undermining the professional staff throughout the corporation. Five, adopt a formal hiring and performance appraisal process for the Chief Administrative Officer. Six, adopt a bylaw outlining the relationship between the CAO and Regional Council, including Council's authority in setting compensation. And number seven, ensure that the region's legal and human resources staff review all changes made to employment contracts before making changes. And you can get the full list of recommendations on the region's website. The Ombudsman also recommended that the Niagara Region report publicly and to his office on the progress made to implement all these recommendations. With the file closed, the Ombudsman is satisfied that his recommendations have been effectively implemented by Regional Council. And I'm going to give you Chair Bradley's quote on this. While the 2016 CAO hiring process and the resulting fallout will long be remembered as a stain on the region's reputation, this term of council made it a top priority to take immediate action on this matter. As a team, we implemented all of the Ombudsman's recommendations, ensuring we took every step necessary to prevent this type of controversy from occurring again. I want to thank Mr. Dubé and his staff for the exceptional report and recommendations, as well as their commitment to work with us as we implemented policies to make the region more open, fair, and transparent. The residents of Niagara deserved better, and these new policies and practices will help make sure we are living up to our constituents' appropriately high expectations. And that was a good day, people, to receive this.
Yes.
A really good day. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions, and I don't want to knock this down.
Thanks, Barb, appreciate that. Questions to the regional councillor? Seeing none, again, you're right, I got that in today, and I thought comments by Chair Bradley were bang on, correct, bang on. Yep, so appreciate that, thanks, Barb. Moving on, we have staff remarks. Staff inside the chamber, anything?
Super quick.
Oh, you want to go first, CAO?
Sure. Through your worship,
Absolutely.
just a minor announcement. Through your worship to council, got a staff member at his first council meeting. That's Joe Colasardo, who started a few weeks ago, but today is at his first meeting, and is the manager of infrastructure. Right? Did I get it right this time? So you'll see some reports that he's written are already on the agenda. He's here to answer questions and to support the director of public works, and hopefully the first of many council meetings. And Olga did a great job. I just want to say that my Main Street was a great presentation.
Great, thanks. Mr. Szpowski.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a few comments for Your Worship and Council. First off, we wanted to provide an update on the roof repairs at the Vale Health and Wellness Center. As of today, we've retained the services of Tremco, who specializes in roofing and building maintenance. We have retained them through Kinetic GPO, which is a cooperative purchasing solution that's available to the public sector. They've completed their initial assessment and will be completing their second review in order to provide recommendations over the next month. At that point, we'll have Tremco approved contractors bid on the work and progress to construction. We're all well aware of the urgency of this matter, and we're working hard to ensure the work is completed in a timely manner and with a solid solution that will fix the issues that we have there. And then I also had an item on signage that we're working with the MTOs. So we currently have two items that we're working with the MTO on, which are the service club signs to be installed on Highway 58 and Highway 140. And we also have the Ramey Road name change, which is moving to Progress Drive North and Progress Drive South. So I spoke to the MTO today, and they informed me that the service club signs have not been made yet, but will be updating us shortly as to timelines. The Progress Drive North and South signs are made, and there is an active work order for them to be installed. We are past the original timeline of early September, so they will be updating us shortly to let us know exactly when they plan to do the installs. The city has offered our services to help expedite the situation, and we are going to work with them to try to make sure that they are in the ground before the ground freezes. And I have one more. Staff are pleased to announce that we have launched the water service and sewer lateral replacement grants and loan program on our website. Council approved this program in 2022 of the water sewer budget, and it offers a grant of up to $1,000 towards replacing a water service and a sewer service, so $2,000 total. And also a loan program where eligible residents, residential property owners can apply for up to $2,500 loans for each service, so $5,000 in total. This means that a residential property owner could receive up to $7,000 total for replacing their water service and sewer lateral and only have to repay $5,000. So we're encouraging the residents to visit our webpage for further information, which is www.portcolborne.ca/water grant and loan program.
Great, thanks Mr. Szpowski. Any further updates? None in the room. Mr. Schultz, do you have anything? No, I guess not.
No, nothing from me.
Great. Thank you, David. Now on to councillors' items. I think I started with Councillor Bodnar last time. I'm going to start with Councillor Wells this time. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Your Worship. At this point in time, I have nothing, no remarks.
Thank you. Councillor Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nothing from me either.
Thank you. Councillor Bruno.
Just one, Mr. Mayor, through you to Mr. Shapowski. Steve, I'm wondering about on Main Street. It's now 10 years since the revitalization, and a lot of the power-coated black bollards, chairs, benches, bicycle racks, and the light poles are now starting to get pitted and are due for a refresh. And I'm just wondering, with budget coming on, if you could look at perhaps a phased program to have those done so that we can begin next year, starting maybe with worst first on that whole stretch.
Steve?
Through your worship, I think that's a great idea, and we'll definitely submit something within the budget to be able to phase those replacements or updates in.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Baggio.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Shipakowski answered both my questions in his staff remarks regarding the Vale Center and the service signs. Thank
Good.
you.
Thank you. Councillor Borgard. Councillor Danch.
I had just one to Steve there. I sent him a couple requests for some personal repairs on some property, and I just wanted to thank him for getting that going. And to Michael and Frank, we are trying to do our thing for you guys, so thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Bodnar.
Nothing tonight, thanks.
Great, thank you. On to consideration of items that were pulled. So first item is item 8.1, the Affordable Housing Strategy and Action Plan. Recommendations that Chief Administrative Office, Economic Development and Tourism Division Report 2022-201 be received, and that Council approve the Affordable Housing Strategy and Action Plan Report and recommendations as attached to Report 2022-201. At this time, we have Mr. Tim Welch of Tim Welch Consulting, Inc., and he's going to provide us with a presentation. Welcome, come on up. Just on the microphone, press the red button. Yeah, that's okay.
Technology has never been my strongest.
Just in front of you. There you go.
There we go. Thank you very much, Mayor Steele and members of council. Yeah, we're very happy to be back. We were here late June presenting, giving you an overview of the housing needs assessment and work undertaken so far. And tonight is sort of the, I guess, formal conclusion, but story's not over, I'll say, in terms of the affordable housing strategy. Next slide, please. So very quickly, we'll cover, recap the purpose and overview. Got a one slide to cover an 80-page background report to recap on that. Talk a little bit about the open house we had in early July with really good turnout. Cover the recommendations. We have 13 recommendations in the report, and chat a little bit informally about next steps. Next slide, please. So the affordable housing strategy certainly links in and supports the city's overall strategic plan. It stated a future where every person in Port Colborne has access to housing that's not only affordable, but also suitable, stable for where they live and safe. So we had the affordable housing strategy look at how you could provide a sufficient range of affordable housing options and what were some of the different opportunities to move forward with to help meet the housing needs in Port Colborne. While there's very much a role for all four levels of government in terms of meeting housing needs, we tried to have the report focus on initiatives and activities that could be undertaken in Port Colborne itself. Next slide. As mentioned, that we've gone through the background report, lots of stakeholder interviews. We reported to council in June. We had the open house in July. We had further feedback from the advisory committee that helped us through this report, and then the council the presentation to council tonight. Next slide. in 80 pages, I tried to summarize it, but essentially the population is growing, and again, as council's aware, that growing more significantly than it has for a number of years. The population is aging. As someone who's above median age myself, I'm aware of that fact in terms of the aging population. At, again, the highest level, there's been a dramatic increase in ownership prices over the last few years. Unless you are selling a house, essentially 80% of the households with modest incomes in Port Colborne could not afford to buy a house from scratch today. And even with house prices sort of moderating the last few months, because interest rates have gone up, that counters the effect in terms of affordability. And also that another key finding was about average rents are out of reach, certainly for low income and many moderate income households, that when you look at apartments that are actually advertised for rent, those are at levels that are not really affordable to households that are earning less than $50,000 a year. Next slide. As mentioned, we had an open house, a good amount of discussion, very enthusiastic crowd, I would say. We had about 40 attendees, a lot of comments through notes, through verbal comments to us. We had dots to stick on if people didn't want to be verbal and just wanted to show by color what things they liked. But there was certainly support for intensification and trying to have more flexible zoning that can encourage the creation of affordable housing. There was lots of discussion about the importance of having increased amounts of seniors housing, both affordable but also that is more appropriate for people that might have mobility issues as they age. There was a number of comments on the importance of bringing land to the table where possible from different levels of government, but also from community organizations. And the discussion of partnerships. So again, trying to be a little bit more creative with private sector developers who might have land, might be looking to have some of those units be made affordable. So there's a lot of positive feedback on that, and also discussion about what incentives can the city help. Again, the city's not going to be the sole funder of affordable housing, but certainly some incentives, and we'll talk about that a little more in the recommendations, was seen to be helpful by attendees at the open house. Next slide. We had a draft vision statement that we presented at the open house. We got generally positive feedback. We had one or two suggestions, and we fine-tuned it. But this is the housing vision statement that we have that's presented in the affordable housing strategy this evening. Next slide. So we had 13 recommendations, as I mentioned. There was one recommendation, again, I'm trying not to get into too much level of detail, a bit of fine-tuning of the definition of affordable housing in the official plan. But we also thought it was very important to have affordable housing targets in the official plan, and we looked at the projections that the planning staff have worked on in terms of population growth and number of units, and with a goal of having 40% of those units be affordable, and we're talking about a range of affordability under the provincial policy statement, and then that's the definition that's in your official plan. But to have within those 40%, to have a goal of 20% of the units that are expected each year to be more deeply affordable at average rent levels or less, because that's important in terms of workforce housing for people who are working in retail, working in restaurants, pensioners on basic incomes, etc. So it is important to keep adding units for lower income households. Next slide. That recommendation 3, again, to keep working and have a more formal policy developed in terms of surplus municipal land, to make sure it is viewed to see, is this appropriate for a new affordable housing development, and not just vacant land, but also if the municipality is considering a new development, whether it's a community center or if there was a new library development we've seen in other communities, to look to say, is there a way to combine those community buildings with some housing on the second, third, fourth, fifth floor above, to make efficient use of that land. Also, we recommended to have, although there's not a large amount of purpose-built stock in Port Colborne as a percentage, it is important to preserve that. To recommended for city staff to move ahead to get a rental replacement policy in place. Next slide. And we've got 2 recommendations for both the official plan and the zoning bylaw amendments to not be overly or in some ways unintentionally discriminatory against affordable housing. And I don't mean that in an overt negative sense. I mean that some of the rules, for example, have more flexibility for commercial, for plazas that could have as of right zoning for a mixture of residential and commercial use. Or if you're having rules around accessory units, currently in your bylaws, there's restrictions on not having 2 front doors for aesthetic purposes, but that can, for some people looking to add an accessory unit, that could block them or means they have to go through a minor variance application. So try to making it facilitate things just a little bit more easier in terms of the official plan and the zoning bylaw amendment, and we have lots of details that we've forwarded on to staff to look at to move forward with. Next slide, please. Recommendation 7, in terms of looking at municipal financial incentives and non-financial, which can be a little bit more flexibility in terms of parking requirements. That doesn't mean no parking, but a little bit more reduced from some of the requirements you have there. We've had discussions with Gary Long and the consultant that you've had working on the new CIP plan, and we're looking to have some further discussions to help fine-tune those recommendations that relate to creation or support of affordable housing. With accessory dwelling units, you have fairly good policies in place right now. Part of the feedback we got at the open house was not being aware. So to try and show examples, do a little more promotion of that small scale intensification in terms of creating accessory units. So when people want to know how can you do it, if you have other examples, say, here's where it was done here at 2 or 3 homes, either in Port Colborne or elsewhere in the Niagara region, say, yeah, this is how it can work. So it's just important to show good positive examples. Recommendation 9 is, we've seen some municipalities in Ontario say up front now, when you're coming in with a application for new development, to say, okay, that's good, but how are you going to help us meet the affordable housing goals in the city of Port Colborne with this application? That doesn't mean that every single development will have something, but one, it starts the discussion, it starts the dialogue, and again, can get some creative back and forth going that maybe there can be a handful of affordable units either in a townhouse development or an apartment building or a condo development. 10, to try and have the city, and I know the city has been doing this, but in terms of looking for collaborations, whether it's a community group, and I think I read later on tonight, there's a report that will talk about collaboration on a piece of land between the city and Niagara Regional Housing. Again, a great example in terms of trying to move things forward. So to try and keep that dialogue going in the community. Next slide. We are always looking to have more done by the federal and provincial government. You know, we could have in our report probably pages of suggestions in terms of additional funding, but it is important for your city and your city working with your sector organizations, AMO, Federation of Canadian Municipalities, to keep advocating to the federal and provincial levels of government that there is a lot more to be done in terms of their involvement. We've seen good progress, but there's certainly more to be done on that. And then the last couple of recommendations are seeing, okay, how are things going? So trying to have an updating report once a year. What are things being done in terms of creation of new affordable housing? And then probably a 5-year review to say, okay, we've had 5 years of the affordable housing strategy. What are the results? Are there things we need to fine tune to move forward? So next slide. So that's at a very high level, the recommendations. Again, formally, in terms of next steps, again, this wraps up our affordable housing strategy. We've given some suggestions and some ideas to staff to further work on certainly the planning side particularly, but a few other things about doing some advocacy and outreach, and hopefully things can keep moving forward on some of the good progress that we already have in the community. So I'll pause then and happy to take questions and comments from councillors.
Thanks, Mr. Walsh. I'll start on my right, Councillor Demery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. I could not be happier. Thank you so much for this presentation and for the work that you've done. This actually came about from January 12th, 2019. This council finally decided that it was time to put forward the request to support my request for the housing strategy to be done. And it was to be done in-house at the time. That didn't work out. Circumstances didn't allow. And it was decided to use a consultant, which I think was probably the best idea we've ever had. I'm not sure who exactly got that decision done, but it was a great one. But the housing the vision statement that you have there says it all. It's all I ever could have hoped for, and I think Port Colborne is going to be richly rewarded for all of this. But thank you.
Great, thanks, Councillor. Councillor Bruno?
Thank you, Worship. This last year, I had an opportunity to not participate, but witness at Federation of Canadian Municipalities conference, a section on affordable housing. And one of the takeaways that I thought was unique to this is back to thinking about the customer, in this case, the tenant or the owner. Most people have a hard time defining what affordable is. We've all talked about that.
Yeah.
A lot of the concentration, including in your recommendations, talk about increasing supply or lowering the cost to build it so that it can become affordable. But it was interesting, one of the commenters talked about not just the supply, but the affordability after the unit is owned or rented. So many of the ways that you make a house cost less is potentially, not using the high efficiency furnace, using the lowest price hot water tank, not, LED, lighting. All the things that actually cost the homeowner every day, every year that they own it. And if they're putting into a mortgage, but they're paying out a portion of it in high energy costs, same thing with windows, then really they're gaining at the front end, but spending that money that could have went to the mortgage out every month. And so I'm wondering if there is anything that can be put in policies, whether it's building code and that, to talk about the structure, our value in the insulation, windows, all the ones that I've just listed. And I thought it was an interesting comment and very poignant because, the people that are making it to get in those apartments, they're just making it.
Right.
And so they need help after the fact. Perhaps we can give them some help at the front end for a long-term gain. And I don't know if anybody's addressed that in the studies you've done, put it into recommendations. Is there anything we could do in the solutions to make the houses affordable to live in?
Right, in terms of the operating costs, and,
Yes.
and whether it's to the tenant or pressure on the landlord owner or the owner. Certainly there's been, just at a very general level, the Ontario Building Code over the last 20 years has had fairly significant improvements in terms of energy efficiency requirements. We've got at the federal level a number of initiatives that do have a focus on having a much more energy efficient building. So projects, and I assume the Port Cares project, I'm not involved, but my understanding is that we'll have CMHC funding to be contributed. CMHC co-investment program, for example, has a requirement that the housing must be at least 25% above the 2015 National Energy Code. The federal government have come out after a few months ago now in terms of having energy incentives for people to retrofit their homes. Again, Port Colborne, in terms of the analysis, has a larger than Ontario average percentage of older homes, so that's going to be certainly important and helpful in terms of allowing moderate income homeowners to get some financial assistance to improve the energy efficiency and lower their operating costs. So there's a number of steps that can be taken. We didn't make a specific recommendation in this strategy over and above what's happened in the building code and in the federal programs. There are things that can be considered. Again, I'm always reluctant to name the City of Toronto. The City of Toronto has a higher green energy standard in the buildings that they require to be built. There is all that trade-off in terms of extra capital costs up front can make things challenging to work financially, even though it may have a better long-term savings in terms of operating costs. So there is that balance to strike in terms of when you're looking at affordability during the development construction side, trying to make sure you achieve a good balance so that the costs are not too large that it makes it it doesn't get built. So it's trying to achieve that balance is tricky. But we've got a lot of good incentives in different programs right now.
So there's nothing you've seen out there that we could do on the municipal side in terms of requirements in those buildings? Anything we could leverage?
Again, it's something you could look at as a municipality. Are there some additional requirements you could put in terms of energy efficiency that are over and above the building code? Or you could also look at if there's financial incentives. Again, a number of the federal and provincial programs, particularly the federal programs, say we'll provide these financial incentives if you meet energy efficiency targets that are over and above the code, the building code. So those are things that you could consider in terms of financial incentives. It will make it a little more complicated for people applying, but that's something that could be considered.
Great, thank you.
Councillor? Okay, further questions? Great, Mr. Walsh, appreciate it. Oh, sorry, Councillor?
Through you, your worship, to the presenter, I want to say thank you for the report. It was an excellent report, especially your recommendations regarding accessory dwelling units and incentives to get those forward. A lot of your recommendations did focus on Planning Act type of applications or tools. One that I did not see was a community planning permit system. Are you familiar with this municipal tool?
In general terms, and I know that's something the province has certainly encouraged in a number of municipalities. There's been very, very low take-up of it, is my other understanding, in terms of it's a relatively complex system for municipalities to switch to.
Is it something that maybe our municipality should look into when we're looking at implementing an affordable housing strategy?
I think it's probably, in terms of getting organizations, more important to be having if I rank them, more important to be having the good in your CIP in terms of those incentives. There's also and again, this is not so much my area of expertise, but in terms of the push the province is having for quicker planning approvals. I mean, part of it with that system was to try and get faster planning approvals, but it appears the province is pushing forward with other ways to try and make sure planning applications that come in are approved in a speedier fashion than has historically been the place. So I don't know if that most recent provincial direction will almost jump over that option as well. But I would probably leave that more in the hands of planning staff to comment on.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Go ahead.
Yep. Another question for you. In your research, when you were writing your report, did you see any regional incentives or affordable housing strategy that we could take anything from? Is there anything that the region is doing in this regard?
Yeah, the region certainly is undertaking a number of things. There have been, there's certainly region funding and again, we've got region staff here can probably elaborate better than I, but certainly there's been capital funding that comes through a combination of federal, provincial dollars that's transferred to the region, and the region is allocated to a number of projects throughout the region that have been constructed. I know the region is also working and putting in staff time to help with the Port Cares development, as your city has put in staff time to help move the Port Cares project along. The region has also provided rent supplements. Generally, it's for 25% of the units that are created can be offered rent supplements, so those units can be more deeply affordable to someone like a senior or someone with a disability pension that has a very low income. There's also, just on August 25th at Regional Council, there was a new development charge incentive package brought in that I would offer was an improvement from the previous one in terms of providing more. It's a bit complicated, I would make the observation, but it certainly will help both some different proponents move forward in terms of financial incentives to offset region development charge costs.
Okay. Would any of those incentives be applied to accessory dwelling units, or anyone willing to develop accessory dwelling units?
So I think there's the policy in place to not be charging development charges for accessory dwelling units. That most I shouldn't say most, but certainly a large number of municipalities have taken the position that an accessory dwelling unit does not trigger the need for a development charge payment, to act as an incentive.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks. Further questions? Just a couple things on my end, and I've been with staff and we've met with developers that are coming in looking at developing properties. And if it's not me, it is staff. One of the first questions we ask is the affordability component of their development. So, and we've been able to get one recently that called us back about a week later after he was trying to get a spot for his mother-in-law in the GTA, and he basically banged the table and said, "Hey, we're in." So his development will have some affordability components to it, which we're happy to see. And also the province announced recently about utilizing provincially owned properties, whether it be buildings that are no longer used by ministries or vacant land that can be used for affordable housing projects. So we know there is some provincial properties within the city that could be up for sale, and hopefully we get first dibs at that and can move some more projects forward. So again, Mr. Walsh, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate
and
it.
Just a special thanks to Gary and staff have been really helpful on this project. Thanks.
Perfect, thank you. So I did read out the recommendation. If I could have Councillors Desmarais and Bodner move that to get it on the floor. That's fine. Any further questions? Councillor.
Through your worship to, I guess, is planning staff? There's no planning staff?
Mr. Long. Well, David's here, but Mr. Long did the report.
Mr. Long, okay. One thing that I noticed in one of the recommendations was that we may want to just convert parkland into, some parkland, because we have apparently an abundance of it, convert some of it into affordable housing. And I just want to make sure that in the future, we follow the master plan, the parks master plan, in how to dispose of those lands. And there is a 9-step process that we have in our parks master plan. So I just want to bring that to staff's attention and just to make sure that we do implement that when moving forward and implementing affordable housing strategy, and if that involves removing any parkland.
Mr. Long?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, good evening, Council. Yeah, I can confirm that that city staff would be using the Parks and Rec master plan as a guiding document. And the councillor is right, there is a process in that document that outlines how surplus parks, could be identified and disposed of. And part of that involves a public process.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried unanimously. Thank you, Council. Next is item 8.2, Library Annual Update and Strategic Plan Presentation. The recommendations that Port Colborne Public Library Report 2022-2006 be received, and that the library's annual update and 2023-2027 strategic plan be received for information purposes. Susan, welcome.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to yourself and to the rest of Council, on behalf of the Port Colborne Public Library Board and staff, thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening and to present our annual update and our new strategic plan. And next slide, please. So here's the library team. We have, of course, our library board, including our chair, Mike Cooper, our vice chair, Brian Ingram, Council Representative Mark Bagu, Brian Beck, Valerie Catton, Harmony Cooper, Jeanette Frenette, Ann Kellery, and Cheryl McMillan, who is here this evening. And I do have to acknowledge them because they give their time and dedication to the library. Our library team consists of Mr. Scott Louie, Chief Executive Officer, Brian Bowles, our board treasurer, myself, Director of Library Services, and our very awesome team, Rachel Tkachuk, Christine Tice, Jennifer Sider, Kristen Lascelles, Kyla Harrietta, Amanda Emery, and part-times Christina Saltarelli, Gary Turner, Nick Reed, and Gia Jimmy. That is your library team. So 2021. 2021, as with the rest of the city, continued to have challenges due to the pandemic. But your library was open to serve our community, whether it was curbside or in person, all year long. Our team underwent some changes. We said goodbye to 3 of our staff who retired, and we welcomed 3 new faces. Behind the scenes, though, we were busy. We were planning, preparing, implementing innovative new changes so that when our doors would reopen, we would be ready to have extra programs in an accessible, inclusive, and welcoming space. In 2021, aside from our regular programs, helping our community was very important to staff as our community navigated challenges. Library staff answered questions hours and hours via phone to help our community, and many times library voices were voices to people who just were isolated and needed a friendly voice. Our staff assisted with accessing and printing vaccination QR codes. We had a virtual income tax clinic. The board eliminated fines on overdue items to reduce barriers to services during this difficult time. We had free print services, programming, weekly take and makes. I was very proud of my staff who every single week during the year had a take and make for families, so families weren't disappointed by the lack of programs that the pandemic did pose to our community. We made curbside easier. We had window shopping displays, website carousels, and we also maintained what we call our visiting library service to individuals who are homebound and to Northland Point. We included a slide here about the library board's 4-year term, but I'll just focus on 2021, where the board was assessing and planning for the future, conducted a building condition assessment report to help us select capital projects to maintain our building. We did some capital projects, eliminated fines then formally on overdue items, and looked at the truth and reconciliation calls to actions as they pertain to libraries. And the library spearheaded workplace education for board and city and library staff. Year 4, and currently in 2022, looking at legacy and transition readiness, because when the municipal elections come up, so does the term for our board. And this year we completed a significant OTF Resilient Communities grant where we reimagined and refreshed our interior spaces, and the board came up with its newest revision of its strategic plan. And also, as with the city, the board was very supportive of our COVID response and recovery, supporting council and the city's response and recovery plans, prioritizing the well-being of the library as workplace and public space. And a highlight for that was we implemented a cashless payment system, which we are continuing to have going forward. Next slide, please. So here are our stats. I'm not going to go over them all, except to say that they're significantly better than 2020. We're not back to pre-pandemic levels, but we're getting there with great strides. Next slide, please. Again, if you notice in 2021, we still had a majority of curbside checkouts rather than in person, but that was as our recovery progress went forward. Next slide, please. So anchored in success, also we're part of LINK, Libraries in Niagara Cooperative, 10 partner libraries, and we have resource sharing and we ship books across the region back and forth. And in 2021, we loaned over 8,000 items to our partner libraries, and our own borrowers had over almost 6,500 books that were brought in for our users. Next slide. And I won't go over all the programming engagements that we did. Highlighted, of course, was Top Hat and our income tax clinic and our pop-up library. Next slide. We continued with the rhythm of the library, which we couldn't do in 2020, without celebrating all the major events. And next slide. 2 highlights were our Recreate a Book Cover contest with our winners, and our free comic book day went ahead without a glitch with our superheroes there. Our Trillium Grant project completed with refreshing our spaces for accessibility, capacity, resilience, and more inclusive spaces. Next slide. And there's our collaborative meeting spaces and also our new computer areas. Next slide, just a nice comment about the library. And our deckhands in action. So we are busy in 2021 to date welcoming back our patrons. As you can see in the graphic to the right, the first quarter of 2020, we were in normal numbers, 14,000 people coming in that first quarter, and drops as we go. But if you look at the gray, we're rising steadily, and staff predicted that in the next quarter we'll be up to, hopefully, if predictions hold true, almost 14,000, almost back to normal. So what we're currently doing now is we're expanding our programming. We've had our adult painting classes, local author talk with award-winning local author Sarah DeWard. Our Let's Talk About is going to resume in October, and we just keep growing our collections. Next slide, please. We're working on our capital projects, getting those finished before the end of year. We are, in terms of technology, we're completing a connectivity and phone solutions project. We're installing a wireless print management solution for the public, and we're upgrading our financial system. Next slide, please. Exploring new ways to deliver our services across the entire city, and we're expanding our relationship with Link. Our collections project, decolonizing the library classification system in order to comply with the Truth and Reconciliation's call to actions for libraries. Looking at human resources, we're reviewing the library staffing needs, looking at updating job descriptions, and creating a succession plan for the Director of Library Services. And our community partners, as we engage more, our community partners are growing in length along with our library partners. Next slide. And as we go forward, looking to 2023, staff are very excited to implement the board's new strategic plan. We have capital projects lined up, and we are going to keep upgrading our technology for both the public and staff, expanding makerspace, digital lab, looking at new ways to reach out to patrons across the entire city. We're going to be conducting a community profile, updating programming, new partnerships, doing a diversity audit of the collection, and working with the museum, hopefully on some outdoor art installations. That's the plan. Feasibility study to look at some additional shared spaces with the museum. Working further on the Truth and Reconciliation calls to actions, and looking at a memorandum of understanding. Next slide. And we couldn't propel forward if we didn't have the most awesome library team headed by our awesome CEO. And I think that says it all. We're committed to the city to support council's mission and vision. And that's our report, updated. And if you don't mind, I'd like to go straight into the strategic plan. Thank you. So here's our strategic plan for 2023 to 2027. And before we get into it, I'd like to thank, on behalf of the board, Scott Louie, Gary Long, and Greg Higginbotham for their assistance in helping the board with its planning process. Chair's message, and our chair does say this is a bold and innovative plan, which not only the board but staff are very excited about as we move forward. The vision statement is, the board reaffirmed the vision statement. It did not change. Our vision is empower, enrich, and educate. They also reaffirmed our mission statement, which is that the library is committed to providing the services necessary to meet the needs of our user communities. Our values also stayed the same, except that we added respect and integrity to one of our values. But other than that, it's all the same. Comments from our patrons. I'll let you enjoy those later. More. And here are our 6 goals. But prior to going through them, I'd like to state that our last strategic plan had 5 goals. And then the board looked at the fact that the city has 6 pillars. We wanted to align our goals with those of the city so that we could do our very best to support what the city wants to do and what council's vision is for the future. So if you could move forward, please. Thank you. So the first goal, to maintain and develop high-quality, inclusive programming and services for our user communities. And that aligns with the city's pillar of attracting business, investment, and tourists in Port Colborne. So we have our objectives are to support our staff and to give them opportunities to assist in developing and delivering the programs. We have actions which staff will implement to reach these goals. Objective 2, leverage strategic relationships to provide diverse programming. Again, engaging our existing partners, but also add new partners. And going to do programming such as expanding our Let's Talk About and increase programming opportunities, especially with our good partner, the museum. Third objective is to upgrade and increase access to leading-edge technology to expand digital literacy and community connectedness. We'll be expanding Makerspace, working on our digital lab, anything digital to help our public and also ourselves. Develop the library collections to support and reflect a growing and diverse community. In conjunction with that, we'll conduct a diversity audit of our collection. And also to attract new users through effective promotion and marketing of library programming and services. Moving on to goal 2, retaining, recruiting, and innovating in human capital and people. Aligns with the city's pillar of people, supporting and innovating in human capital. So the objective here is to invest in ongoing professional development. Objective also is to ensure job descriptions are accurately reflect the workflows, support operational procedures, and that will be to reassess, look at our competencies, review job descriptions, and create a succession plan for the Director of Library Services. Increase accessibility in public and staff spaces to ensure barrier-free, fair, and equitable access. Again, collaborating with the expertise of the city. Identify and optimize grant opportunities. Innovate for efficient infrastructure. Continued exploration of the cultural block. Goal number 4, to exercise financial stewardship by leveraging all funding sources and partnership opportunities. Aligns with the city's pillar of value, financial management to achieve financial sustainability. Here again, looking at additional revenue sources, optimize grants, implement best practices to strengthen the library's capital and financial assets, create a memorandum of understanding, develop performance indicators. Moving on to goal 5, trailblazing library trends while maintaining core library services, developing methods to deliver and strengthen innovative user experiences, aligning with the city's pillar of service and simplicity, quality, and innovative delivery of customer service. Here again, looking to create and support a programming team to explore new and innovative delivery systems for programs, enhancing the user experience, and as we go forward, enhancing and adopting new delivery methods, all with the interest of providing the best services for our user communities. Moving on to goal 6, engaging our external stakeholders and user communities to ensure good decision-making for the benefit of all, supporting the city's pillar of governance, communication, engagement, and decision-making, increasing awareness of the library and services, conveying and measuring impacts of library services, and deepening our strategic partnership with City Council, city staff, and other critical stakeholders. And in a very quick nutshell, that is our strategic plan.
Great, thank you, Susan. Questions from council? Councillor Baggio.
No question, Mr. Mayor, through you, but a comment. I just like to thank Susan dedicated staff you have at the library. Well, every time I walk in there, these people are just great. It's like walking into home. You know, it's very peaceful, and during COVID, I could see through the window your staff cleaning these books and pages and storing them and doing a heck of a lot of work. And so I'd just like to thank you for keeping the library a community anchor, I guess you call it. So, thank you.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Any further questions? Seeing none, if I could have, oh, yes, go ahead. Mr. Louis.
Yeah, through your worship of council, I think this is the last in a series of department updates that we brought to council. Every single department presented before council at council's request the term before this term. And I think we got a little bit better at doing it. I hope we did anyways from council's perspective. We kind of graduated from, you know, there were 12 fires reported. We fought 12 fires. 12 fires were put out. You know, kind of this, and only use fire as an example. We were very statistics heavy and we weren't very high on qualitative measures and qualitative analysis of our programs and services. All the directors did a great job in my opinion, and I asked, you know, council to thank them for the work they did presenting. One of the points I did have, I mean, the point was probably to demonstrate if you see the titles of the slides, you know, sort of the past, present, and future, where we've been, where we are, and where we're going to. Lastly, I want to say, I did have people from the public reach out to me, property owners in Port Colborne, who said, you know, kind of after seeing these presentations, maybe you guys do know what you're doing down there. Maybe staff does have a good handle on this, and things are organized and there is a plan. It's not just that we come in every day and figure out how we're going to, you know, administer the city. It's that there's a plan in every single department, and there's a city strategic plan and a strategic plan for our boards, the museum and the library specifically. So I thank the directors for the presentations. I hope council liked them and they were of value to council. And of course, we can keep that going in the new term of council starting next spring.
Great, thank you. If I could have councillors Bagu and Bruno move the recommendation that I read. No further questions. All in favor, raise your hand, and that's unanimous. Thank you. Item 8.3 is Haney Street Affordable Housing Project. Recommendation that Chief Administrative Office Economic Development and Tourism Report 2022-168 be received. The council directs staff to draft a memorandum of understanding, MOU, with Niagara Regional Housing for partnership on an affordable housing project for council approval at a future council meeting. If I could have councillors Bruno and Bagu put that on the floor. Councillor Bruno, questions?
Thank you, Worship. Like our regional councillor and her guest, I know all the council is very supportive of this. We met on it, and certainly there was great support. But I do want to bring forward a recommendation that's talked about it, and I want you to think of this as the glass is half full, not half empty. And that is, I'm aware that the Niagara Regional Council and Housing have various proposals from everybody. And so I think a true partnership means that both sides work as expeditiously as possible to get this project off the ground. Whilst there is restraints probably on the region, it talks about in the report, the deliberations about in the discussion about putting a time frame on this. And I would like to put that time frame on it so that the region in the list of all the wants for affordable housing is going to look at Port Colborne's best opportunity, which is, I would say, at least valued at $200,000. It's on a main street. It's basically ready to go next to a project. That there be a time limit put on to this deal of 3 years. And I say that because I think we all want this to happen. And we all want it to happen now, and the sooner the better. And for what I hope is the best deal out of all that the Niagara Regional Housing is looking at, they'll put the best deal first. That's not to say that if there's lots of progress, I suppose 3 years includes the next term of council, and so there may be many people here familiar with it, hopefully, that would ensure that there's continuity into the why. And so from my point of view, I think we'll always want to come up with more land for Niagara Regional Housing. But if you want this land, you've got to move on it. And that's going to mean you're going to have to convince the powers to be at Niagara Regional Housing that this is the best deal out there and the best location, and it twins with your existing properties. So through you to perhaps Mr. Long. Mr. Long, you talk about in the discussion what I've just laid out and what we've talked about, and you refer to it kind of that it could be in the MOU. But I'm just wondering if it would be helpful if this council endorsed a time limit on it, rather than just waiting for the negotiations. So Niagara Regional Housing knows that this is available, hopefully more to come from us, but that to get this one, you've got to get us up the ladder. And would you suggest that that comes in the form of an amendment or just directions that a specific term of 3 years be put into your negotiation of the MOU?
Mr. Long?
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Bruno, I would support having this council pass or at least amend the motion that is before you tonight. I think it creates a sense of urgency not for just our city and our corporation, but it would also provide direction to Niagara Region, and we need them to create a sense of urgency to make this project, to accelerate this project in their capital budget process, and have NRH accelerate this project as well. So I think amending the motion and giving it some strength would be advised.
Great. I think that it fits with our surplus land strategy, whereby we're putting these properties out there. This one's come up. It's a hot one. It could easily be resold tomorrow morning, I believe, given its location. But we want to reserve it for them. And I think that's a good thing. And I think it's a good thing to give them some time. But the time can't be unlimited. So I don't know if I need the clerk's help on this for an amendment, Mr. Mayor.
We're helping you on that, Councillor.
Thank you.
Talk longer.
I don't know what else I can say about it.
Yeah, go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Through you, Mayor Steele. A proposed motion to include is before council, that council directs staff to include a 3-year term in the MOU with Niagara Regional Housing.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll take that as a
friendly.
Bruno and Bagu, or is that a friendly amendment? You're okay with that? Okay, I'll take it as a friendly amendment. All right. Any further questions on this? All in favor, please raise your hand. Again, unanimous. Thank you, council. Good job. Thanks, Donna. You and Gary have your work cut out for you. I'm sure it'll all come back and we'll be happy, happy, happy. Great, thank you. Item 8.4 is the draft discharge of firearms bylaw 2022 update. Recommendation that Community Safety and Enforcement Department Bylaw Services Report 2022-145 be received. That the discharge of firearms bylaw attached to the Community Safety and Enforcement Department Report Bylaw Services 2022-145 be approved. That bylaw 458811904, being a bylaw to regulate noise, be amended as shown in Appendix C to Community Safety and Enforcement Department Bylaw Services Report 2022-145. That the proposed discharge of firearm variance fee be approved, and that the updated Schedule F of the user fees and charges bylaw be included in a future amendment of bylaw 69499521. If I could have Councillor Wells and Bagu move that, and I'll go to Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not sure whether I would go through you to Fire Chief Lawson. I believe that would be it. There's been quite a bit of work that's been done on this, and I really am glad that there is a ability for individuals and public that are concerned about the discharge of firearms for subscription to notifications of variances to this bylaw that we hopefully will pass tonight. But in short of that, there's one concern that I have, and that concern is in regards to the identification of the number 2 shot in number 10A. And when we began this, it was my understanding that the number 2 shot would be based upon lead pellets, not lead shot, not buckshot. And for those that are not totally aware of this, it can be very confusing because they use an inverse numbering system for the size of the shot, and there are different types of shots and things like that. But a buckshot is a real heavy load. It's a large, in fact, the number 2 buckshot caliber or size of pellets has a caliber greater than the high-powered rifle restriction that we have within this bylaw. So it carries quite a bit of impact when it hits, and it's used for, primary use for that is to kill live game, a large game. And so I have just a question through to you, Mr. Lawson, if you can, as to why we have allowed it to go to a number 2 buckshot rather than a number 2 lead shot.
Chief?
Through the mayor to Councillor Wells, that could have been a misunderstanding. I mean, I've done a little bit of education here in the last 24 hours to understand that there is a difference between steel buckshot and lead shells or lead pellets within that shell. So again, this is council's bylaw. If you would like to change that, by all means, staff brought that recommendation, but if we want to put in lead, we sure can do that for you.
Thank you. So I would like to propose an amendment to that. And the amendment would be, it would be more along the lines of a friendly amendment where 10A would be changed to where the firearm is a shotgun, that it had a shell shot no greater than a number 2 lead shot with the dimensions of 0.15 inches and 3.81 millimeters.
Okay, Councillor Beggar, are you fine with that as a friendly amendment? Okay, just point of clarification, Councillor. Does that affect deer season when they don't use, they use more like a slug than pellets when they're hunting deer?
This is for upon lands outside the defined areas.
Okay.
Okay, so the defined areas would be where they would be allowed to hunt the deer.
Okay, perfect. Just want to clarify that for hunters, that's all. Okay. All right, I'll take that as a friendly amendment then, council. Is that fine? All right, you got a question? Yeah, just before I go to you, anything further?
No, that's everything, and as I said, I would encourage those members of the public that are concerned about this to subscribe to the verification notification.
Okay, Councillor Baggy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a question for the chief regarding the, great to see you could do applications online and stuff like this, and my question, I guess, are the neighbors that have to be notified, if somebody puts an application online, the neighbors have to be notified that the application is in, they got 10 days. Is the rule still the same, that the neighbors have to be notified by the proponent or by the city for those 10 days?
Chief?
Through the mayor to councillor, I mean, we can make that stipulation depending on what we decide tonight. My understanding is when somebody would apply for an exemption or relief from this bylaw, they would be coming to you, and at that point, council can decide what means of notification they would want.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm good with that. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, great, thank you. Councillor Danch.
Not 100% on this one, but I just wanted it noted that the duck hunting guys are still going to be allowed to fire in Gravelly Bay. It doesn't show that area as being blocked off from any type of shooting and stuff like that. So the guys that are duck hunting or want to duck hunt, they're still going to be allowed to do that, correct?
Chief Lawson?
Through the mayor to council, my understanding is once we hit the water and our toes are wet, we're in federal jurisdictions, and that's outside our bylaw.
Right, okay, thank you.
Great. Okay. Further questions? All in favor, please raise your hand. That's unanimous. Thank you, council. Sorry, opposed? You're opposed? Oh, okay, sorry, I thought I saw your hand go up. That's carried. Eight five is the Erie Street Water Main Construction Project Update. Recommendation that Public Works Department Report 2022-211 be received. The council approve extending the contract with Associated Engineering for contract administration and inspection services to project completion at an estimated cost of $155,000, funded from budget 21C PWR48. The council approved fully paving Erie Street and complete select sidewalk improvements to be funded from the 2023 and 2024 asphalt resurfacing programs and the 2023 sidewalk replacement program. The council allocates $25,000 from 21C PWR48 to be used for legal fees. I have Councillors Bruno and Wells putting this on the floor. Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Your Worship. Subsequent to me pulling it, I had a number of my questions answered during the week by staff and earlier, and I'm just wondering if the residents could be notified of this, particularly in light of the program to do the laterals, which will have to come after the construction has been completed. Could we let those folks know? And I understand that the program for the grants will be extended, but I think it'd be important for them to know, because a lot of them are worried about winter closing in on them.
Mr. Szapowski?
Through your worship to Councillor Bruno, we can definitely do that.
Great. Thank you.
Great. Councillor Walls?
And thank you, Your Worship. This is a significant increase and of time for this project to get completed, and a significant increase in potential costs for the city. I was just wondering if Mr. Szapowski could just give us a brief explanation so that the public that's watching and can hear what we've encountered, what problems we've run into this.
Mr. Szapowski?
Yes, through your worship to Councillor Wells. So the city entered into a contract with Stonecast Contracting, who's the contractor out on site installing the water main. And we also entered into a contract with Associated Engineering, who's completing the they completed the detailed design originally, and they're also completing construction inspection and contract administrative services. To date, the contractor has completed installation of the water main and 3 of the 6 connections to our existing pipe network. And they've also installed 21 of the 56 water services that are required to be installed. So based on the work completed to date, the project is estimated to run into late 2022. And due to this, additional funding is required for the contract administration and construction inspection services for this project. So the costs are directly related to the extending those services. When reviewing the area, staff determined that the best course of action would be to repair the road in full. So that would include a full resurfacing rather than just having the water main and the service trenches restored. So that would be additional costs that we're recommending go to the 2023 road resurfacing budget. And we're also recommending that some of these sidewalks also be repaired in the area that have deficiencies in them at the same time, while we're also replacing those service trench panels. So that's some extra costs too that we're recommending are funded through the 2023 sidewalk replacement program.
Councillor?
That's great. Again, it's unfortunate that we've gotten to this point in this contract, and I know a lot of the residents there are pretty frustrated with trying to get down Erie Street. It's more like an ATV track or an off-road track, and I really appreciate staying on top of that and trying to get it done as quickly as we can. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried unanimously. 8.6.
Mr. Mayor, can you just review that vote, please? I didn't get the...
Oh, all in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Next is 8.6, sale of Knoll Street. Recommendation that Chief Administrative Office, Economic Development and Tourism Report 2022-200 be received. The council approve entering into an agreement of purchase and sale with Stanley Homes for a vacant city-owned lot on Knoll Street. That a bylaw to authorize entering into an agreement of purchase and sale with Stanley Homes regarding the sale of a city-owned lot on Knoll Street, legally described as part of Borden Avenue, part lot 792, Humberston, east side of Knoll Street, Port Colborne, be brought forward, and that the mayor and acting city clerk be authorized to sign and execute any and all documents respecting the sale of these lands. I have Councillors Bruno and Wells moving this. Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. Glad to see this forward in this and come to a conclusion. Through you to Mr. Long or Mr. Cotton. One of the things you noted is the size of the lot to Stanley Homes, which leaves a remnant. Okay, thank you. There's a remnant property then available after the sale of the frontage to Stanley Homes. And I just wanted to make sure that before closing the Stanley Homes one, that we've sorted out the adjacent piece so that we're not left with a piece of property. And B, if we are, that could possibly be offered to Stanley Homes. I just want to make sure that we're doing this in concert and concurrently. So I'm just wondering if you could give me any response or assurance of that.
Mr. Cotton?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruno and Council. Yes, we are working in concert that piece will be dispersed into either a separate sale, or if not, it will be able to be offered to Stanley Homes as well. So we are working on that. We are in discussions with the property owner, with the other property owner to the north.
Secondly, that, bring back to us that the sort of value to us has been maximized, let's put it that way, in balance with the convenience of perhaps neighboring properties. Thanks.
Okay.
Sir, was that a question?
Yeah, was that a question, Councillor?
No.
More of a comment? Okay, thank you. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Worship. In following up with Councillor Bruno's question, through you to Bram, the property that's fronting on Steele Street, are we doing the same approach with that? Is Stanley Homes interested in that, and or do we have another purchaser that might be interested in that full part, rather than piecemealing it out with to the abutting addresses?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Wells and Council. We are working actually with the adjoining property owners right now. If those negotiations don't take fruition, then we would have a second lot that would be on Steele, and that we would be putting on the open market.
Councillor?
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Further questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Anybody opposed? You went up so fast. All right, thank you. That was unanimous. 8-7. Chippewa Road Pedestrian Safety Investigation Update. Recommendation that Public Works Department Report 2022-174 be received for information. I have Councillor Wells, Councillor Desmarais moving that. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Worship. This is a very contentious road there, Chippewa Road, and I was just wondering that I'd like to request Mr. Sapowski to give us maybe a little brief summary of everything that was done, our findings, and why you support that no further action needs to be taken.
Sapowski?
Yes, through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Wells. So Council previously requested staff to review some specific aspects of Chippewa Road. The items reviewed included sidewalks, investigating the streetlights, and also speeding concerns. In terms of sidewalks, the city distributed 48 surveys, of which we received 24 responses regarding the sidewalk. Those results indicated that 7 residents wanted sidewalks on the street, and there were 17 that did not want sidewalks on the street. When we reviewed the street lighting, we determined they had standard LED lighting, and they were spaced every other pole, which is very typical with that area. We did note that there was one area that was blocked by trees, by the tree canopy. So we have contacted our operations center, and they will be looking at that to clear out some of the treed area to light up the intersection in one spot. When we reviewed the speeding, we did this with the speed radar devices that we have that were up, and the public may have seen that they flash a certain color when you're speeding over the limit, but they also track the speed at which the vehicles are actually driving. So all that information is accumulated over time, and then we look at it and we determine what the average speeds are. And when we were looking at those speeds, the average speeds monitored were 42 kilometers per hour eastbound and 45 kilometers per hour westbound. So very close to the speed limits that are indicated there. For those reasons, we're recommending that we're going to continue installing the delineators within the roadway, but we're also going to monitor with the speed radars again in the summertime next year after we do the construction of the Berkeley and Chippewa intersection.
Councillor?
Thank you. One other question here. There is some concerning regarding the lighting there, and as you said, Mr. Szpowski, that you had to trim, or there's some tree canopy issues. Is there a standard lumens that's required on roadways, sidewalks, things like that, that's established by some authority that we can follow by and measure to?
Mr. Szpowski?
Yes, through you, Your Worship. There is there's a guideline called RP8, and it basically sets out guidelines for roads, road lighting. And basically the city did have a retrofit, an LED retrofit in, I want to say 2014, don't hold me to that, but it's around that time frame. And at that time what they do is they assess what the lumens are actually required within roadways, and then they would replace it with a certain wattage, because metal halide lights versus the LED lights, they're not the same wattage, so they would assess what would be needed at that time.
And so does the light intensity on Chippewa Road meet within that requirement, within that standard?
Szpowski?
So we didn't do a full-scale lighting diagram of exactly what needs to happen. We could do that, but it's very typical for a roadway like that to have the lighting in that aspect. If council wishes, we could do something along the lines of that, full photometrics on the roadway itself, but based on what we're seeing in the field there, there's not really any issues presented at this time.
Councillor?
Thank you. I would just suggest that if we get some concerns from some of the residents on that road, maybe we might want to consider doing that in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, specifically after you clear some of the tree canopy, that obviously it'll give a different perspective. And Steve, just based on a couple of the councillors' questions, those lights are actually adjustable, correct? Up and down as far as brightness? Would I remember that what we put in?
Yeah, through Your Worship, I'd have to take a look to see if that exactly. They are specific wattage, but they are driven by drivers within them. So there is the possibility that the drivers can be actually swapped out to actually give that capability.
I remember when I served as a councillor at that time that that's what was proposed to us by staff, is that they were adjustable up or down based on lighting needs, where some areas of the street you may want to be a little bit brighter, and probably because of tree canopy and things, other obstructions that may be on those roads or streets. So great, thanks. Councillor Demery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Steve. Steve, I do thank you for this update. It was what I was looking for all along, and I have heard from several of the people along Chippewa today and over the weekend. For the most part, I think people are reassured by the fact that city staff are listening. And that's what they wanted. They wanted their voices heard. They wanted to have their concerns addressed. So they are feeling good about that. The lighting issue, though, is what seems to be remaining to be a problem with everyone. And a point was brought forward to me is that, is our staff out there at nighttime walking the street? Because that is what's going to tell you what the lighting is like. And it's not just a case of being bright enough. Those lightings are incredibly directional. So if you take a look at street light here, street light there, what's happening at the midpoint? There's where the issue is, because you don't have sidewalks. If you have to walk that street, you have to walk the street. It's very narrow, deep ditches on both sides. It's incredibly dark. It just makes for a disaster waiting to happen. And even if there was not an accident, there's a feeling of being unsafe. And you don't want people walking around feeling unsafe. So there's that as well. It's just, I would like us to take another look at how it really is to try to navigate the street on foot at nighttime. And especially not in the middle of the winter, because, obviously the tree canopy is going to be gone. But in the summertime, or right about now, it is difficult. There needs to be something done with the lighting, and I'm not sure what it should be, but I would leave that in your capable hands. But I know that the directional aspect could be changed a little bit. It may help. Thank you.
So Councillor, I'm going to take that as council direction to staff as opposed to an amendment to the recommendation, if that's okay?
Absolutely.
And I think Steve has that. He can take that back.
Yep, thank you.
Perfect, thanks. Further questions? Councillor Beauregard, then Bodnar.
Through your worship, to Director Schapowski, I just want to say thank you for this report. It was well written, and in particular, the evidence that you bring forward, like the data that was collected and the process that staff went through, I believe it was well done, and I really appreciate the efforts of staff. And as well as the findings, I think we're taking the correct action. And one thing that is important is that intersection reconstruction. So could you provide just a brief description of what that reconstruction will entail?
Yes, through you, your worship. I can definitely provide a brief overview. So we are moving the three-way stop to Berkeley and Chippewa Road. We are stopping up the one intersection where we would end up having a turnaround basically installed. So we're eliminating the one intersection, and we're going to actually install a turnaround, so what we call like a hammerhead turnaround, so that garbage truck can still have accessibility into that area. And then we'll end up putting a little more asphalt in there, but we'll offset it with some greenery. And then basically it'll lead to safer sight lines at the intersection, just to secure, basically make the whole intersection, the area a little bit safer for all the residents that are traveling out there.
Councillor?
While you were speaking, it also came to my attention, that little sort of island there. Is there any plans for that in the future, or is it just going to be a patch of land, or is there anything that maybe we can do in the city to add to that?
Mr. Schapowski? Through your worship. So there's no immediate plans to do anything to that. We do want to keep it as kind of a green area right now. If council has suggestions as to what we would want to do out there, we could definitely determine what cost would be associated with that. But right now we do maintain it as just a grassed lot.
If I remember correctly, was the hammerhead supposed to go into that?
Yes, through you, your worship, that is correct.
Okay, all right. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you. Just to pick up, through you to Steve, just to pick up what the mayor was talking about with those adjustable lights. You'll come back to us and let us know if that is a thing there, because I think that's part of the solution probably, if they are, and we haven't activated them or used them. That may save some money just by cranking them up a little bit.
Yeah, you can just email council with regards to that.
Yeah.
Is that fine, Councillor?
Sure, and will we keep in mind then when we adjust those lights or whatever, the person living across the road, I know they're very directional, but when you crank up LED lights and, you might have to buy heavier drapes to go in your front window or something. We don't want that to happen either, so. And I know you'll take all that into consideration, but just had to say it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Further questions? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. Unanimous. Thank you, Councillor. Council? And just to confirm, we did have a written delegation, which is attached to the report from Melissa Bigford and Christopher Lofquist. Item 8.8, recommendation report for zoning bylaw amendment at 360 Clowley Street East, file number D140122. The recommendation is that Development and Legislative Services Planning Division Report 2022-207 be received. And that council require no further public notice in accordance with section 3417 of the Planning Act, and that the zoning bylaw amendment attached as Appendix A be approved as revised rezoning property at 360 Clowley Street East from institutional to R4-69. I have councillors Bagu and Beauregard moving this. Councillor Bagu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I knew this was from the public meeting we had and staff did a good job on the report. My only comment, or I guess a question to you, Mr. Mayor, is it states in there the city has put a 11-meter maximum height on this development, and it says that a few times in this report, and I just want to make sure the neighbors understand that this 11-meter maximum height by the city can also go to the Committee of Adjustment for another height, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Schultz?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Beggy, for the question. That in most cases is correct. However, when council passes a bylaw, there is a 2-year moratorium in which the applicant cannot go to the Committee of Adjustment for any variances unless they come back to council to ask for that permission first.
Councillor?
Great answer. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor Demery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to David. David, I'm just looking through the report. Clearly, there's nothing different in this report than there was in the information we were provided at the public meeting. And I did have some issues with the proposed development at that time. I realize that we're not looking at the actual development here tonight. We're looking at the zoning change. So it's a far larger picture, and that everything else should be taken care of at the time that the development would go forward. But I do really have a problem being asked to make really binding decisions on drawings that are, we have drawings that are conceptual in nature. They're not giving us, it's not showing us exactly what's going to happen there. We have a garbage collection system here that is pretty high-end and looking very good, sitting out near the front of the roadway there right on Clowley Street East. But my understanding is, from the question I asked at the public meeting, is that that garbage system isn't going to be applied to this property. So it's misleading and it really does bother me, but obviously no one took the opportunity to make the changes before tonight. But I just want to make sure that the public does understand that all of the issues that were outlined with this particular development will come forward at the time of the development actually happening. So when site plan control comes in place, the public is going to want to know, when do they have an opportunity to speak to this? Do they have an opportunity to speak to this? As well as, when would council have an opportunity to speak to this? So maybe you could answer that.
Mr. Schultz?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council. That is correct. There is a further process that would be gone through here with site plan and control, in which staff would look at things like landscaping, fencing. The locations of garbage is certainly one of the main concerns in this case and in most cases for developments. So certainly those comments can be taken under advisement to staff to make sure that that is looked at with a fine-tooth comb, and we can ensure that that's dealt with through the site plan process.
Councillor?
Okay, thank you again, Mr. Mayor, through you to David. Thanks, David, for that answer. I just would like to be able to have the public hear specifically from you exactly what opportunity will be had by council, the public through council, we could certainly work it that way, to speak to each of the issues around this. Is this going to be coming back in front of council? That's really what the public will want to know, because parking is also something that is at issue.
Mr. Schultz?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. This report is, as you said, to deal with the zoning of the property. If at this point there isn't any other plans to bring this back to council following this meeting, if council makes a decision on it tonight, there would be the opportunity. The site plan control process is publicly available, and the reports and plans are available through staff and the planning department. We can certainly notify any commenters on this application that the site plan has been submitted, and they can review that at that time.
Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, again through you. So if the public is notified, you can certainly notify the people who have already signed on to the process. If they are notified, they will be able to send their comments to you, and those comments will be truly reviewed and considered for change?
Mr. Schultz?
Certainly we can review and take a look at what is in our purview through site plan control. I can't guarantee that all the changes that public requests can be made, but we can certainly do what we can to help screen those garbage enclosures and deal with the rest of the concerns if we can.
Okay, well, I do thank you for your answer, and I trust that you have very clearly heard what the public's concerns were around parking and the garbage. Those are the two big ones, and obviously some of the other more minor issues as well, and that you will consider their needs while you're making the decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And we do have Mr. Tomato on here for the proponent, so if there are any questions. Any further questions on this report? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Tomato, for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Item 8.12. Is the Active Transportation Fund Contribution Agreement. And the recommendation that Chief Administrative Office, Economic Development and Tourism Division Report 2022-205 be received, that a bylaw to enter into contribution agreement with the Permanent Public Transit Program, Active Transportation Fund be brought forward, that the Chief Administrative Officer be delegated authority to execute the contribution agreement, and the Council approve an increase to the Active Transportation Master Plan capital project budget from $50,000 to $100,000, representing the additional $50,000 grant received through the contribution agreement. If I could have Councillors Bagu and Danch move that. Councillor Bagu.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm surprised I'm the first one all the time here. Just a question. It says the city will hire a consultant to complete the Active Transportation Master Plan. It does not give a date or a proposed date when this master plan report would become completed. Is it 6 months? Is it a year? Is it 2 years? Next council? Well, it's probably going to be next council anyways.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Bowles? Mr. Long? Mr. Long or Mr. Bowles? Either one.
Through the mayor to council, I'm not on the selection committee to review this particular RFP, so I do apologize for that. I can take it back to staff and recommend that we come back and communicate to council a date with respect to, obviously, and knowing some of the people that are working on this committee, they recognize that this needs to be worked on immediately, and there's a need, and council is looking forward to this project getting completed.
Mr. Long, we could be safe to say within the next 6 months, due to the fact there is an election this year, that it'll be back to council. Yes. Is that fine, Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm surprised Director Bowles is the first time he did have an answer. Thank you.
Any further questions? All in favor? Let's carry unanimously. Thank you, Council. On to correspondence. Sir? No, it was withdrawn. Yeah, question was asked and answered. One step ahead of you, Madam Clerk. Sorry.
Want to move the recommendations now? Because it was approved with consent.
Yeah, it was moved. It was moved.
With consent?
Yeah, with those that weren't withdrawn. Yeah. I didn't draw it out at the beginning.
Okay.
Sorry, Council. There was an item that was asked to be pulled, but the Councillor didn't want to pull it, so we didn't pull it, so that's fine. His question was asked and answered. 9.3 under correspondence. This is a letter from Kingsville, Ontario. Read Town of Kingsville Council Resolution 336-08292022 in opposition to Bill 3, Strong Mayors Building Homes Act 2022. There is a resolution before you that was passed by that council. I have Councillor Bagu moving or wanting to put this on the floor. Councillor Bagu, what is your motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to propose that this council support and adopt this resolution by the town of Kingsville, Mr. Mayor.
Seconder, Councillor Desmarais. Any questions? Comments? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, there are no motions this evening. Are there any notices of motion? No notices of motion. We have one set of minutes from the Environmental Advisory Committee, the June 8th, 2022 minutes. Can I have Councillors Bagu and Wells, as they sit on that committee, move that? All those in favor of those minutes, please raise your hand. That's carried. And we have a recommendation arising from their meeting. So let me pull that up here, bear with me. And it's a memorandum to council multi-municipal wind turbine working group correspondence, Ontario's energy plan and wind turbines. And it's a recommendation from the EAC for council consideration. That the Environmental Advisory Committee supports the views expressed by the working group and recommends that council write the Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks requesting the province, 1, the city reaffirms its 2017 resolution that it is an unwilling host for wind turbine projects until it has been demonstrated they do not pose an adverse effect on the environment and the health and safety of the public. 2, the city recognizes that wind-powered hydro generation is a great green source of energy, and the province should support research and development of the wind turbines that are more efficient and have performance characteristics that mitigate any adverse effects. 3, the province establish a moratorium for all new applications for wind energy projects until it has been been demonstrated that all adverse effects can be mitigated. 4, update the direction provided in terms of setbacks between wind turbines and other activities. 5, the province needs to take more aggressive action in enforcing the terms of approvals for existing wind turbines before authorizing the construction of any new wind turbines. And 6, bar operators of projects with these compliance failures from participating in any of the contract extensions or opportunities to bid on capacity expansions that are envisioned in the recent ministerial directive. And 7, where ongoing MECP review of compliance and land use compatibility policy is concerned, the province continue current Environmental Protection Act compliance requirements where wind turbine noise is concerned on both existing and new facilities. Further, the council support EAC's recommendation that the planning department staff liaise with planning departments of the turbine working groups, Bruce, Huron, and Grey counties, to determine appropriate land use compatibility guidelines and setbacks used in these municipalities, and where appropriate, consider their usage in Port Colborne's official plan and zoning bylaw. If I could have Councillor Wells and Bagu move that, because they do sit on that committee. Are there any questions on this? Seeing none. One comment is, I know back in the day when the Green Energy Act came out, a number of companies came here, but Port Colborne really wasn't a good site for wind turbines, which was, I think, good luck for us at the time, I guess. But as things move forward and technology changes, maybe in the future we can see some of those some type come to Port Colborne. I know they've talked about offshore here, but anyways, so no further questions, comments, all in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you.
Because the district of firearm to amend the bylaws, so it has to be approved as amended.
Yeah, okay. So bylaws, counselors, we have bylaws 21.1 through to 21.8, and 21.1 is as amended in our council from this evening, okay? And that'll be amended, what's in the agenda tonight will be amended by staff. Questions on any bylaws? If I could have councilors Desmarais and Danch move that. All in favor? Let's carry unanimously. Hey, 45 minutes. That was tonight's time bet. No confidential, no procedural, no information. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, and thank everyone for watching. Our next meeting, Madam Clerk, is October 11th, which will be the last meeting prior to the election. No?
Oh, yes.
Yes, prior to the election. So, yeah, so October 11th, we'll see everybody again. We thank everybody for watching this evening, and we thank those that joined us in the gallery. That's it. We are adjourned. Thank you.